The Western mainstream media, NATO stan as Pepe Escobar calls it, is celebrating. They are clapping, they are cheering about the recent political reshuffling inside of the Russian government. This comes as Vladimir Putin assumes another term as president of Russia, his inauguration coming in the first week of May. And now we have many moves being made by the highest levels of the Russian government, including a replacement and a major change in Russia's military brass. So Sergei Shoigu, who has been subject to so many rumors, initially it was he was going to retire. Others were down on him, even on the pro-Russia side, those who believed that Russia, has a very principled position on the Ukraine conflict. There are many who are down on him. The Western mainstream media have always leveled on these accusations about Shoigu's performance, all of the Russians that have died, so-called because of him. So Sergei Shoigu is no stranger to narrative spin and what it means to be at the top level of Russia's military brass. But he is no longer the defense minister. That is the big news here. He has been removed from that post, but he is now the general secretary of Russia's National Security Council. Not the win or the W that the Western mainstream media or NATO think that it is. But here is the report. Putin removed Shoigu as Russian defense minister, and Vladimir Putin has proposed Andrei Belousov instead. And this is big because Mr. Belousov is an economist, and I'm going to talk about why that's important. So President Vladimir Putin has proposed that Sergei Shoigu is replaced as Minister of Defense of Russia by acting First Deputy Prime Minister Andrei Belousov, as the Federation Council said on Sunday evening. Shoigu has been appointed Secretary of the Russian Security Council. Senators are scheduled to engage in consultations regarding the nominees put forth by the president during committee sessions on May 13th and during a Federation Council meeting on May 14th, as announced by the upper house of Russia's parliament. No further alterations have been made to the roster of candidates Putin has submitted for cabinet positions. His nominations include Vladimir Kolokotsev for the position of Interior Minister, Alexander Kurenkov for Minister of Emergency Situations, Sergei Lavrov for Foreign Minister, so there's no change there, and Konstantin Chichenko for Justice Minister. All right, so that's the report, because the big news is that Sergei Shoigu is no longer defense minister. But there was more reshuffling that occurred. Okay, so not only this, but you had, and there's still not a lot of information about what happened, but you also had Russia's top security official dismissed. Former defense minister Sergei Shoigu will replace Nikolai Patrushev, who was the former secretary of the Security Council. Okay, so that's who. So Dmitry Peskov, spokesperson of the Russian government, said that Putin opted to assign a civilian to lead the defense ministry, citing the necessity for the agency to embrace innovation and progressive concepts. Peskov further mentioned that Shoigu, in his capacity as secretary of the Security Council, will serve as the president's deputy within the Commission on the Military-Industrial Complex. So it's not as if Shoigu is going to have nothing to do with Russia's defense ministry, with Russia's ultimate policy when it comes to military affairs. The Kremlin spokesperson added that Valery Gerasimov, the head of the General Staff of Defense Ministry, will remain in his current role. Peskov noted it will be revealed in the coming days who Nikolai Patrushev's successor will be after his departure from the position of Security Council Secretary. So we have Sergei Shoigu in, we have Patrushev out, okay? And there's no word about Patrushev's what's going to happen, but they did say there have been reports that he is going to take another position. It just hasn't been announced what that is. For those who don't know, Patrushev is known as a pretty hardline Russian nationalist. He is very much a staunch promoter and defender of Russia's sovereignty. he is someone that the collective West has been very weary of as a potential replacement for Vladimir Putin himself within the top brass of Russia's political class. And that's because Patrushev is a no BS defender of Russia's sovereignty. And that means that he is going absolutely nowhere. He will be somewhere in Russia's political sphere. It's just not so clear where yet. So now we need to talk about why this happened. Well, we don't have to pontificate why this is happening, why Sergei Shoigu is no longer the defense minister, why an economist, a political economist, is going to be taking over as the defense minister. Here is what Dmitry Peskov had to say about the decision to change defense ministers. Conflicts today are won by those who are open to innovations, said Dmitry Peskov. So Andrei Belosov would be the best person to deal with the issues facing the Russian military nowadays when it comes to economic needs, the Russian government spokesperson told journalists on Sunday. Earlier, President Vladimir Putin named the former first deputy prime minister as his pick for the defense minister's position. An economist by education, Belosov has long worked with the Russian government in various capacities, but had previously dealt with civilian matters only. He served as Russia's economic development minister between 2012 and 2013, and has worked as the president's economic aide between 2013 and 2020 before taking over the position of the first deputy prime minister, which he held until May 7th. When asked about the seemingly unconventional choice for the head of defense ministry, Peskov replied, "The battlefield is now dominated by those who are more open to innovations and ready to introduce them in the fastest way possible." The Kremlin spokesperson said that with the Russian military budget rapidly growing, it is important to integrate the economy and the military into the national economy. According to Peskov, the Russian military budget has grown from 3% to 6.7% of national gross domestic product, GDP, since the start of the conflict in Ukraine. It was not critical for the Russian economy, but the situation still started to resemble the late Soviet era when the Soviet Union's military expenditure rose to about 7% of GDP. Such a situation was extremely important and demanded an adequate response from the authorities, said Dmitry Peskov. Belosov is not just a civilian person, Peskov maintained, adding that he has proven quite successful at leading the Economic Development Ministry and worked as an economic aide for the president for a long time. The defense ministry should be absolutely open to innovations in the introduction of the most advanced ideas and creation of conditions favorable to economic competitiveness. So, Putin has proposed replacing Sergei Shoigu with Belosov. We're going to see if that actually happens, but it looks like it's going to happen. And this is very big. I mean, this is very big. And I'm going to put out a few ideas before we get to why this is going on and how Vladimir Putin's inauguration has laid the basis for these changes. But to put Belosov in there, an economist, in a time where Russia's economy is becoming more and more dominated by military production. This is just a fact of Russia's political economy at this point. It is one that has been necessitated by the Ukraine conflict. It was 100% necessary, and it is something that is actually benefiting Russia's economy dramatically given the GDP growth. But Russia is obviously seeing the writing on the wall. On the one hand, the conflict in Ukraine is going in Russia's favor. So it makes a lot of sense to shift toward an increased emphasis on how this ongoing conflict, which is not going to end anytime soon, or at least it's not going to be resolved fully given NATO's ultimate position. NATO will always be there, and I'm going to show you exactly why that is, given recent military exercises along Russia's border in places like Romania and Estonia. But nonetheless, having an increased emphasis on political economy makes total sense given Russia's increasing share of GDP going to military production, and also given the fact that Russia is in the driver's seat. It does not have to worry about political instability or even economic instability at this point, or military instability like in the conflict in Ukraine. It is a really shrewd move, and it's one that the collective West is going to have a hard time wrapping its head around, especially since all you hear about when it comes to Russia from the collective West is look at that authoritarian government. Look at how much one person, the military, the so-called police state, right? They always talk about Russia as being this absolute police state, this authoritarian regime, quote unquote. But now you have a civilian as head of the defense ministry, essentially. Of course, he's been an economic aide, he's been economic minister. He is not a nobody, as Dmitry Peskov said. He is a professional. He is someone who has been critically responsible for Russia's economic success over the past decade or so. He's been obviously a key aide to Vladimir Putin in advising him on how to restructure Russia's economy, not just for this conflict, but over the course of the last 10, 15 plus years, where Russia has been able to get out of the decimation and obliteration and absolute devastation that the fall of the Soviet Union left in its wake when the collective West and, of course, the corrupt oligarchs inside of Russia collaborated for the wholesale theft of Russia's economy, and, of course, to the detriment of millions upon millions of people. So, in effect, we have a massive change. We have massive changes happening. We don't know where Petroshev is going just yet. We have a lot of information that is going to come out about this over the course of the next days and weeks ahead. But what is clear, though, is that Vladimir Putin and Russia's political leadership is consolidating in a way that is already frightening the collective West. And why would it scare the collective West? It's because, as Victoria Nuland has lamented of late, that Russia's political leadership is not where the United States and is not where NATO wants it to be. It's not where they wanted it to be. They wanted a compliant Russia. They did not want Russia to turn into a sovereign state that is able to direct itself toward goals that serve its national interests rather than the interests of the collective West. And what are those? Well, it is to destabilize Russia. It is to break up Russia. It is to make Russia weak. And it is to plunder Russia like it did for those 8+ years following the fall of the Soviet Union. But Vladimir Putin was inaugurated just before these major changes are now being made. And I would argue that Vladimir Putin's inauguration is the foundation. His continued leadership, the stability of that leadership, is the foundation for why such political changes like Sergei Shoigu's replacement, why the political reshuffling happening in Russia is about increasing the stability and the progress of Russia rather than its opposite, which you are going to hear in the collective West media, mainstream media, for the days and weeks to come. So, Vladimir Putin was inaugurated the first week of May. This was the scene at the inauguration ceremony. We'll just listen to a little bit of this. Here you go.
Vladimir Putin. So the head of the state is now in Georgievsky Hall in all its splendor. The hall is named after the Saint Martyr the George, established by the order, was established by Catherine the Great in 1779. So Vladimir Putin is greeted by everyone invited to the inauguration ceremony. Government members, State Duma deputies, Federation Council members, judges.
So that's just a bit of a taste of his welcoming ceremony. Then we're going to listen to his speech, because I believe this part of his speech just underscores the powerful position that Russia is in. And this isn't me speaking as some kind of Kremlin spokesperson. This is me speaking the facts. Russia is in a position of power right now, and I believe that Russia's political stability is grounded in its vision for the world, for Eurasia. And here is Vladimir Putin articulating that to the entire country, demonstrating just how unified the country is right now around these key goals. Here's what Vladimir Putin had to say during his inauguration address.
We are open to strengthening good neighborly relations with all the countries that see Russia as a reliable and honest partner. And I'm speaking about the global majority. We do not refuse to engage in a dialogue with the Western countries. It is up to them to try to hinder the development of Russia, to go on with their policy of aggression, of the ongoing pressure on our country, or they will rather look for cooperation and peaceful relations with our country to discuss strategic stability and safety. This dialogue is possible, but not from the standpoint of arrogance and exclusivity, but only by respecting the interests of each other. And we will work with our partners, with other sovereign centers. We will continue to work to establish the multipolar world order, the equal and indivisible system of security. In the world that is rapidly changing, we must be self-sufficient and competitive. We must open new horizons for Russia, as it happened throughout our history on many occasions. And we must not forget about the tragic price of all the inner chaos. So our system must be strong and resilient to any challenges and threats. It must ensure gradual development of one country, of the unity in the country. But we must not stop because we want to be stable. We must be flexible. We must continue to make progress, to move forward. We can see how the situation in the society is changing, how reliability, mutual responsibility, sincerity, honor, and courage are appreciated in today's society. I will make everything to make sure that the people who showed their best qualities, who proved how loyal they are to their motherland, took high offices in the country, in all the areas and in all the fields.
So, I mean, if that isn't a foreshadowing for this reshuffling, basically giving Sergei Shoigu, who, mind you, has not been disloyal to Russia, but is someone who has been rumored to wanting retirement before the special military operation, has been criticized at times for his performance, to give him this very comfortable position and move in someone who is about innovation, who is about the economic and military relationship of development that's happening inside of Russia. All of what Vladimir Putin said there, from being a leader in the multipolar world, cooperating and collaborating democratically with partners who are willing to do so, calling out the collective West for being the ones to create this situation of aggression, isolation, and then talking about how he is committed to making sure that progress remains the ultimate trajectory of Russia. Well, these moves that Vladimir Putin has just made, and of course the Russian government as a whole, because we cannot say just Vladimir Putin. There is a parliament. There is a process for this. These are Vladimir Putin's recommendations, likely to be passed because, well, someone like Belosov is very much worthy of taking a post like defense minister at this time. Russia is doing fine militarily. Russia is also stabilizing economically. Now it's about becoming innovative and moving even further ahead of where, of course, we're not even talking about the collective West because Russia's already beat those expectations, but Russia isn't playing for the collective West. Russia isn't doing anything for the collective West. It is doing what it's doing for itself and for its own interests, and of course with that global vision for the multipolar world. So we're going to close now with what friend of the show Scott Ritter had to say about the about the inauguration, because I believe his analysis here is pertinent. Be sure to follow Scott Ritter, because this is a Sputnik interview, a Sputnik segment he gave. Be sure to follow him, ScottRitterExtra.com, and support his Waging Peace campaign. But here is what he had to say about Putin's inauguration.
Vladimir Putin made it clear in his speech that he is seeking good relations with the West. Russia's not seeking to dominate anybody, but Russia wants to live in peaceful coexistence with its Western neighbors as an equal, as a nation defined not by Western values, but by Russian values. The thing that made this redefinition possible is this conflict with Ukraine. The special military operation has proven to be the final building block in this new structure of modern Russia, a building block that actually isn't at the top of the Russian edifice, but at the very foundation, a building block of patriotism, a building block that says that the Russians must defend their country. But to defend your country, you must know your country. You must love your country. You must cherish your country. You must be willing to sacrifice for your country. The special military operation has become the litmus test of what it means to be a Russian today. Literally, you're either for Russia or you're against Russia. And for Russians, this choice has been confronted and has been made. And Vladimir Putin is looking to these newly rebranded Russians who have not only said, we love Russia, but we're willing to sacrifice for Russia. We're willing to die for Russia. These new Russian heroes. This is the future of Russia. A Russia that looks to itself for motivation, that looks to itself for inspiration. And this is the Russia that Vladimir Putin is going to lead in the next term in office, an office that will redefine Russia in the final stages of this transformation that has been making continuously since 1999. A Russia that will, for once and all, purge the poison of Western malign influence out of its system and create a pure Russian notion of what Russia is. A Russia where Russians are proud to be Russian and proud of their president, Vladimir Putin.
So that is the segment that Scott Ritter gave to Sputnik, and I believe it's very fitting because what he said there about Russia entering the final stages of a transformation where it becomes truly sovereign and extracts Western malign influence from its political and economic trajectory. It is quite clear that these moves are this political reshuffling is part of that process. And that is not to say that Shoigu or Patrushev, far from it, with Patrushev, are somehow part of this Western malign influence that Putin and the Russian government is still working on extracting. No, but it's about adapting and adjusting to the political conditions, the economic conditions on the ground. That is what Russia is doing for itself right now. It just makes absolute total sense that in this moment where the military in this ongoing campaign to defend Russia from NATO and the inevitability, it seems like, of a war with NATO sometime in the future, that is what Russia is trying to actually prevent. But along with this, having to do all of that, having to prepare for such a thing, having to engage in the Ukraine conflict, and also develop economically with over 16,000 sanctions leveled upon you, to be able to now not just get through that and survive, but to keep a pace with this beating of the odds, which Russia has done. Russia is now going to grow at a rate that is higher than essentially all of the European world, all of the major economies. Its GDP is growing rapidly, in large part because of the direction it has taken in these moves being able to move Shoigu into a position more comfortable for himself, being able to get Belousov in there to give his economic expertise to military affairs in a time where that is afforded. Russia has built that ability, has given itself that ability. And then, of course, finding a place for Patrushev where he can continue to to assert his hardline political and tactical and strategic vision. All of this means good things for Russia, rather than what the collective West and its mainstream media is going to say, which is, well, look, Russia is looking weaker than ever. Well, you heard Scott Ritter. You heard him. You heard his analysis. Russia is not weaker than ever. Russia is stronger than ever. Russia is charting an independent course, and the Russian people, in their many varying ethnic groups and political affiliations, they are becoming stronger than ever. They are coming out of this dark period, and they're doing so in large part because the collective West, because NATO, because, of course, the United States that lead all of them, that lead these vassals, they have essentially provoked this. They've accelerated it to a degree that could not have been predicted prior to February of 2022. So congratulations to the collective West. You have made Russia stronger. You have ensured that Russia's political class, its leadership, is not only as popular as ever, is not only able to do more than ever to develop the nation of Russia, but also what we are seeing is that Russia is becoming essentially bulletproof to all of the malign influence that the Western, the Western imperial apparatus, the collective West, try to throw at Russia, including propaganda. Nothing that the collective West says about these political changes mean a thing, because Russia's trajectory is up. In a period, a really difficult period in the world, we're going to continue to see Russia's influence increase worldwide, and we are going to see more political changes because Russia is looking more and more like that democracy that the collective West and the United States always talk about when they reference themselves. Well, Russia is able to make political changes. It's able to change its leadership. It's able to enact these kind of changes while still remaining true to those interests, those policies that people want. To me, that sounds like democracy, and Russia is further cementing its ability to call itself one. Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.